How's everyone doing? So, Strength Chat episode 57, and today I have got a very special guest for you. Today I'm joined by a 5-time world record powerlifter, a precision nutrition and Westside Barbell certified coach, as well as being published in multiple magazines, Jordan Syatt. How are you doing?
I am fantastic, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
No worries at all. So, how are you doing? What have you been up to recently?
Well, I had a phenomenal workout earlier. I did some chin-ups and rows and some straight arm lat pull downs, and then finished off with some biceps. So I'm feeling pretty juicy today, man. How about you?
Is there any other way to finish a workout than with a little bit of a gun show?
I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter if you're doing upper body, lower body, whatever. If it doesn't finish with biceps, it was a wasted workout.
Because obviously I've followed the content you've put out there for a while. For anyone who doesn't necessarily know your background and how you got to be in the position you are now, do you just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, I started wrestling when I was 8 years old. That was like sort of how I really got into fitness. Wrestling was like all I thought about. Just wrestling and girls was like all I thought about most of my childhood. And then, so basically wrestling from 8 years old. And then by the time I got to high school, I made varsity as a freshman, and I ended up beating a junior out for the varsity spot. And so I had to cut a lot of weight. So, I was cutting from 112 pounds to 103 pounds. I have no idea what that is in kilos.
Yeah, that's way over my head. I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Basically divide that by 2.2. So it was not a lot of weight that I didn't weigh very much, but I had to cut close to about 9 pounds every week for competition, which was a significant amount. And I was doing basically when you're 14 years old and your wrestling coaches say like, you got to lose weight, you do whatever you can do to lose weight. It's like, you don't like understand, you don't know what you're doing. You're just listening. Basically, I looked up to the older kids, the juniors and seniors who'd done it. And like, they learned from other juniors and seniors, and they just were like, all right, we're just going to like not eat for a week and then like cut like 3 or 4 pounds of water a couple hours beforehand. And that's how you do it.
Yeah.
So I was fortunately, I was a skilled wrestler. I was good. I was fast. I had good technique, and my conditioning was great, but my strength was not there, especially when I was going up against juniors and seniors. So that's when I was like, all right, I got to figure out how can I get stronger to compete with these guys? And then how can I figure out how to handle my nutrition better so I'm not like losing like 6-7% of my whole body weight in water hours before competition. Like, it was just not ideal. So that's when I really started getting into strength training and fitness. And I ended up, my gym in high school had kettlebells, which was just like a blessing. Cause if my gym didn't have kettlebells, I don't know if I would be in the fitness industry. And I wanted to learn more about kettlebells. I was like, what are these cannonballs with handles? So I ended up applying to a gym near my home in another town, basically just being like, hey, I want to learn how to use kettlebells. Like, can I intern for you? I'll clean the floors. I'll clean up, I'll wash, I'll do everything. I'll do all this for free. Just teach me how to use this stuff. And they took me under their wing. And before I knew it, I ended up interning there and coaching there. And I spent a vast majority of my high school there. And that's sort of like what kickstarted me in the industry and how I started coaching. And then from that point, I ended up taking a year off after high school. I traveled for a year, went to the Middle East and did that. And then by the time I got back, I went to college and I started competing in powerlifting. I ended up training at Westside Barbell for a little bit, trained under Eric Cressy at Cressy Performance for a little bit. And at that point started my website in 2011. And just like to document my training, really like to write what I was learning about, take videos of my training, like sort of help people, just show them what I was doing. And by osmosis, without trying, a business was built from that, because people would be like, hey, can you write my programs? Can you do this? And I would do it all for free. Like it didn't dawn on me that could be a business. It was literally just people would reach out and like, could you do my programs? And I was so excited. I was like, yeah, I would love to do your programs. I would do it for free until eventually it became a business. And when I graduated college, I had an online coaching business through like the powerlifting career that I built, and sort of it's just blossomed from there, very fortunately. And now I do that. And I also coach Gary Vaynerchuk and basically just coach Gary every day and do my online business every day and lift weights and drink protein shakes and do bicep curls.
That sounds like you're living the dream, really, then.
I have no complaints. I'm very fortunate.
Wow, good. So obviously, chatted there about your background of getting into online coaching and coaching in general. So, what was it a natural progression? Being a coach, was that always what you intended to set out? Obviously, mentioning there about using the kettlebells and that sort of stuff.
You know, in terms like, is the question like, did I always think that I would be a coach?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. So, I've always said if I wasn't in the fitness industry, I would have been a history professor.
Okay.
I'm very interested in. I love history, and I like teaching. I like speaking. I like that. But I think what happened was when I went to that gym and started really like learning about kettlebells and strength training, and I was also so interested in performance in general. It combined the best of both worlds, and that I could essentially teach, because coaching is teaching.
Yeah.
And it was teaching, and it was also learning myself and getting better on that front. So I think it was the best of both worlds, in that like I could do like what I love to do and also teach. And from, I think after about, 6 months at that gym, and really, I remember my first client, his name was Fred, not kidding. His name was Fred. He was 68 years old. And I swear he was 68 years old. His name is Fred. And it was a really transformative experience for me, because when you're a 14, 15-year-old athlete, and you're just brought up in this like world, like you there's only so much by the time you're 14 or 15, and like very fortunate to be very athletic and enjoy sports and be good at it. And like I was in a bubble, and I just thought everybody like should be training very intensely, and everybody wants can do like all this stuff. And then I get the 60-year-old guy who has like 2 torn rotator cuffs, his back issues, like, and literally his only goal that he had, like his goal through training at our gym, was he just wanted to be able to pick up his grandson without worrying about his shoulders or his back. Yeah. And it was like a very like chilling experience for a young kid to be like, wow, so you don't want to like pick someone up and slam them on the ground. Like you don't want to like sprint. You don't like, it was like, you can't do like, you literally just want to be able to pick your grandkid up without like worrying about pain or anything. And so I think I was very fortunate from a young age to be put in that position, because I know a lot of personal trainers, they don't really start seeing this stuff until they're 22, 23, 24. Mm-hmm. And like, they don't really, when they really start working with people. So by the time I was in halfway through high school, I was really understanding the importance of individualization, how to individualize, like how like different people need different things. And it was very powerful for me, and it got me addicted. It got me hooked. Like it's not just one thing. Like everybody has something different, and that's what makes this so powerful.
Yeah, a similar sort of example. When I first got involved in coaching, I played rugby. Ended up stopping playing rugby and got involved in powerlifting. And you think everyone wants to train as a rugby player. You think everyone wants to train as a powerlifter. And it was quite interesting. There was a similar sort of thing. Apart from, we've got quite a big tyre in the gym that I work at, and this woman, I think she was in her 60s. She's still at the gym now, and one of her goals was to flip the tyre. And she didn't want a PB deadlift or anything like that. She just wanted to flip the tyre. I think it weighs about 70 or 80 kilos. And then to see her flip that tyre, it's like, oh, okay. So that to her was something absolutely amazing, which just goes to show that you have to work with the client. It's not necessarily one size often fits all.
I love that. It's true. It's amazing, and it's one of the most rewarding parts of being a coach is seeing your clients succeed and them actually achieve their goals. Because I think one of the biggest mistakes that I know I made as a young coach, and I see a lot of coaches doing it, is essentially assuming their own personal goals are also the goals of their clients. And it's a critical mistake a lot of coaches make. And one of the most amazing experiences as a coach is to be able to watch your clients achieve their own goals and see how happy they are and how excited they are. It's like, there's nothing more gratifying than like being able to sort of help someone along that path to help them realize that like they can do it and like they actually did do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I get a lot more excited when my clients get a good result or a PB sometimes than my own PBs.
I was just having that conversation earlier with a client of mine who she's coaching now, and she was saying how like she wants to bench press her body weight, and she's very close to bench pressing her body weight. And I was like, you know what's going to happen is you're going to end up benching your body weight, and you're going to celebrate for all of 7 seconds, and then be like, yeah, but I really want to bench press this amount. And I was like, meanwhile, a client of yours might do something like relatively tiny, but you'll celebrate like it's fucking 4th of July. And it's like, it's much easier to celebrate the wins of others than it is yourself. And I think it's actually a very important practice to be aware of your own wins and also celebrate those too, because it's like, what's the point of doing all this stuff if you're not going to enjoy it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned there, obviously, working under, training under Eric Cressy and being at Westside Barbell, and a lot of the content and the philosophies that you put out there, I agree with and I sort of buy into. So who has been your biggest influences, would you say, on your career so far as a coach?
Oh man, that's a great question, and it's very tough because there have been so many. But I'll go with, right when I first started. So when I first started at that gym, I can say without question, biggest influences were Eric Cressy, Dan John, Pavel Tsatsouline, Mike Robertson. I think from a strength and conditioning perspective, those guys really, Robert Dos Remedios, like those guys really influenced me from the get. They were like the big influencers. From there were so many more. Martin Birkin from leangains.com, Alan Aragon, and that's getting into more nutrition, Lyle McDonald, JC Dean. If it wasn't for JC Dean, I wouldn't have a website. I mean, there's a great amount of people, and it sort of from there went like, and obviously without question, Louis Simmons, like, treated me like his own son. There's so many, and it runs across various disciplines, right? There's the strength and conditioning world, then there's the nutrition world, then there's the more psychology world and behavioral health psychology and motivation. Like, but I'd say those groups of individuals were probably like, and I guarantee there's some that I'm leaving out, but those are probably like definitely the main ones.
Yeah. It's interesting that, because as a coach myself, I'll read a lot of people's blogs and look at a lot of people's content. And it's interesting that you mentioned there that it wasn't just one person that has an influence on your career, and that sort of leads into the topic that I wanted to chat about today. Is when people or clients are looking for information, that sort of put all the hopes or put all the eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Don't look to all the coaches that you've mentioned there. I look at their content and the books that they've put out, just so it's, there's a common theme amongst all of them, but they all have their own philosophies and put their information out there. So one of the main things out there, which is what you post about on your social media and blogs that you've written, is building muscle and losing fat. So it's one of those common things that people will come into the gym. And I want to build a little bit of muscle, lose a little bit of fat. Do those things go hand in hand? Can they be done together, or what are your thoughts when clients come to you asking that question?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's a lot of information that sort of goes against each other on this topic, and it's super important to understand. So there's I'd say there's validity to both sides of the argument, and I'll explain why. The first argument is that you cannot do both at the same time. And the reason being, I'll say technically that's correct, because to lose fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit, and to gain muscle, you need to be in a calorie surplus. So like inherently, it's impossible to do both at the same time. However, what is the same time, right? Like what does that mean? Like are you talking about in one workout? Are you talking about in 1 hour, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? Like, as far as I know, there isn't anybody who's going into the gym expecting to both burn fat and build muscle within that single workout. It usually happens over the course of 3 months, 6 months. I mean, any coach worth their salt will tell you, like, you track your progress like month to month, every 3 months, take your measurements, take your pictures. Like, you're not going to track your progress every week and be like, well, it's working or it's not working. You need time for it to actually like see something. So over the course of a 3 month, 6 month, 12-month period, yes, you absolutely can and should burn fat and build muscle. And to do that, you might cycle through periods of a calorie deficit and a calorie surplus or maintenance. But within one single instant or moment, no, you can't do it. But over the course of a realistic time frame, yes, you can absolutely do both.
Yeah. So when people, because sometimes if people are wanting to build a little bit of muscle, they'll say, oh, well, if I'm building muscle, I need to, eat everything in sight. If I'm losing fat, I just need to do loads of conditioning. So how do you differentiate the two sort of outcomes? Because sometimes when you mention about building muscle, people think that they're going to go on a crazy bulk. And if they need to lose fat, then you've just got to go down the conditioning route. How does that sort of differentiate in training, and how you coach that? What's sort of the reasoning behind that?
So it's great questions. So I would say number one is in either direction, whether you're cutting or whether you're bulking, it shouldn't be drastic. Like, the changes should not be significant. Training should not change drastically based on your goal, and nutrition should not change drastically based on your goal. It's small changes consistently over time that really yield the best results. And I think one of the reasons people really, really struggle is because they make these drastic changes, right? So for example, someone's like, I'm going to lose weight. And they're like, I'm going to lose it super fast. I'm going to go on a really quick cut and cut a lot of weight super fast. And then they'll have a huge calorie deficit, or they do a ton of conditioning, or both. And it might, like, for the first couple of days, they're like, yeah, it's working, this is great. And then a week in, 2 weeks in, they're super tired. Their strength is going down. They feel really small. They feel really weak. Like, they're like, oh my God, I can't do this. They're like, all right, I'm gonna go on a bulk now, because like, it's like I'm losing muscle. I don't like this. So then they get super excited because, like, I'm gonna go on a bulk. I can eat a ton. Like, I don't have to do any conditioning. I'm just gonna eat a lot and lift heavy, And then they eat a ton, and they eat like shit. They eat like an asshole. And then all of a sudden, like, they put on a bunch of weight, and they see, like, it's not even necessarily fat that quickly, but they like feel like they're getting fatter because psychologically, like, they're eating like they shouldn't be eating, and they're getting a little bit more bloated. Pants maybe start getting a little bit tighter, and they do that for a week or 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden they're like, shit, I'm getting fat. Like, I got to go back into a cut. And they go back and forth without spending any amount of time in any like considerable deficit or considerable surplus, and they end up spinning their wheels for their whole life without ever actually making any progress in either direction. And what should be done is, when you want to lose fat, you go in a slight calorie deficit for anywhere between, you could do it for 4 weeks, you want to do a mini cut, or all the way up to 12 weeks, 16 weeks plus, depending on how much fat you have to lose. And keep your if you want to have conditioning in it, by all means do it. But the main thing for me when cutting is keeping total volume relatively low and intensity high. So you want to still lift heavy, like you still lift heavy weights, but like the total volume, maybe instead of doing 4 sets or 5 sets, you do like 3 sets. And you can just reduce the volume, maintain your muscle by keeping the intensity high. And then when you want to go more towards a muscle building phase, you slightly increase calories. You get it like a little bit of a surplus. You don't even have to do it every day. You could be in a surplus 4 days a week and maintenance 3 days a week, and you're still in a surplus over the course of a week. And then literally I would just like slightly decrease the amount of weight you're using, not like in every set, but decrease it slightly, and then increase the overall total volume. And then you'll end up building muscle, and do that for, 4 weeks on a bulk is a little bit short. Like, it doesn't make too much sense. I'd say bare minimum would be 8 weeks, and then like anywhere between like 8 to 16 weeks. I'll do up to 20 or 24, depending on how quickly you're going.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation, because you do see these people, these clients come into the gym and swap and change between, cutting and bulking, and they go up and down with the food and the training. But maybe physique-wise and, muscle mass and body fat-wise, they actually stay the same and never get anywhere. I don't know what your thoughts as well, but sometimes you find that they just hop from program to program as well. And like you mentioned at the start, they don't necessarily stick with something, for a prolonged period of time to actually see results.
Yeah, they're always going after like the new shiny thing. Like, it's like, oh, what's that one? That one's got conditioning. Cool. Like, I haven't done conditioning, and then like, oh, I read about this. I read about like epoch, and I'll be burning like 4 calories 48 hours after I'm done working out. It's got to be it. And then like they do that, and they're like, wow, that really fucking sucks. I don't like that. I'm not gonna do that anymore. And they're like, oh, I'm gonna do this new program. It's called it's daily undulating periodization. I don't know what it means, but it sounds pretty cool. I'm gonna do that. It's like, just fucking stick with one thing for 16 weeks, see how it works, and go. I'll never forget the first time I stuck with a program for 12 weeks straight. I was 18 years old. I was 18, and I stuck with one training program and one nutrition plan for 12 weeks straight. It got me the best results I had ever gotten up to that point. And I remember I was in my college dorm room, and I was just like, at the end of the whole experience, I was like, holy shit, the key to all of this is just doing one fucking thing consistently. Like, and I was shocked. I was like, I can't believe how much time I wasted. Like, it wasn't for lack of knowledge. It was for lack of patience and for lack of accountability, like holding myself accountable to just do what I knew I needed to do. It's like, and it's one thing to say, hey, stick to this program for 12 weeks. It's another thing to literally do that program consistently for 12 weeks straight when you're doing it day after day after day. And then 12 days in, 15 days in, 21 days in, like, you're not seeing the results you want as quickly as you want. And like, you're really, maybe you're a little bit tired, getting frustrated in your mind. Well, I want to go do this because Karen said she's doing this new program that fucking Janice talked about. Like, I'll try that. It's like, stick with what you're doing. And that's a really hard thing for people to do when they're in the midst of maybe they're having a bad day or a bad week and they just want to change it. Stick with it, because if you're not, then you're never going to be able to quantify your results.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big thing that people sometimes forget. If you're consistent and stick with it, you will get results. And there's that saying of you could have a really good program, but if you don't stick to it, you're not going to get any results. Whereas if you stick to a not so good program, it might not be the best program in the world, but if you stick to it, something's going to happen. That consistency there will point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. I'm like a very big believer that the best program followed inconsistently will yield worse results than a decent program followed consistently.
Yeah. That's the saying. That was worded a little bit better than me.
No, it's true. It's just like, it's the same exact idea. And it's just like, it's a fact. It is an absolute fact. Like, if you could have the best program ever written in the history of programs, and if you're not following it consistently, it's doing nothing. Yeah.
So just touching on training there, and you mentioned sort of depending on if you're aiming to drop a little bit of fat or you're going to build a little bit of muscle, changing the volume and the intensity. What are the, and obviously mentioned, hopping from program to program. What principles do you sort of, or what foundations do you use for people that should be consistent throughout their training when they're looking to build muscle or lose fat? What are the sort of the core principles and foundations that they should be using?
Man, so I would say, let's see. I mean, I could go with like the more like scientific route and be like, well, first we're going to start with progressive overload, and it's like I sort of think that's just overdone, and people like had enough of it. I think a couple things. Number one is you have to find a program that you actually enjoy doing, which is a seriously overlooked, and not even overlooked. It's undervalued, underappreciated, and not believed.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't believe that that's actually true. And it comes down to consistency. Like we just spoke about, like if you're not doing something consistently, it's not going to work. Like literally, if you follow a program that you really enjoy, and this program is a B- program, but you follow it consistently for 3 months, 6 months, you'll get better results than if you follow an A+ program and you follow it inconsistently. Like you're not doing it. It's and that's what I mean by you have to enjoy it, because if you're not enjoying it, you won't do it. And so I'd say like most important, in the same way that I would say if you're looking at the like the base of like the nutritional pyramid, the hierarchy of nutritional needs and everything, like even before calories, which like I think many people would put as that as like the base for like everything. Like I'd say the real base is like finding foods that you love and enjoy, like finding those foods and then fitting calories within those foods is. So in terms of like the base of strength and conditioning, most important is like finding a program you love and enjoy. Then in that is like, okay, we're going to make sure that you're getting stronger. We're going to make sure that you're doing big compound movements. You're going to be doing squats and or variations of squats and deadlifts and lunges and Bulgarian split squats and push-ups and bench press and chin-ups and overhead press and and rows. And then from there, like I would say getting stronger. And I really do think that regardless of whether or not your goal is fat loss or muscle gain, I think it's so funny. I think most people really want to lose fat because they want to lose fat. That's fine. But I think so many people are so focused on losing fat that they seriously miss out on the benefits of not gaining muscle.
Yeah.
And they spend so much of their life in a lose fat mindset. And not only do they not lose fat, but they don't build any muscle. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, if they just spent a considerable amount of time focusing on getting stronger and building muscle, they would lose fat over time. Like they would lose fat in the process, and they would have a healthier mindset and relationship with food. So, I mean, I don't really know if I answered your question or just went roundabout and like didn't, but that's really what I would say is like find an exercise program you like, get stronger, focus on big compound movements, and then really like, regardless of whether or not your goal is fat loss or muscle gain, make sure you do spend a considerable amount of time building muscle.
Yeah, no, that's exactly why I wanted you as a guest on the podcast. You know, the main things that you have to do is one, you know, you've got to enjoy what you're doing. You've got to enjoy the process, enjoy training. You know, when people come in or they're looking to get involved with coaching with me, I'll sit down and okay, what current training are you doing at the minute? Oh well, I do this on Monday, I do this on Wednesday, I do this on Friday, and usually the main workout that they enjoy the most is usually so that workout gets really long, and they keep adding stuff to it. But maybe when they're squatting, that workout isn't as long, and it's like, right, okay, so obviously like we mentioned, having a little bit of a gun show, doing bench press. That's all well and good, but you still have to spread out the other things to make sure that you are heading in the right direction. But absolutely, I think enjoying what you're doing is that's the priority.
100%. I cannot agree more.
So when we're chatting about training and the nutrition protocols, where do you find people usually go wrong? Because there is so much information out there. If people are saying, "Oh, well, I've got to do this workout, I've got to do this workout," where do you find that people usually go wrong when it comes to looking for the right program or trying to find the correct process for them?
I will definitely program hopping, like we spoke about, in terms of like they'll try one and then they'll do another one. and they like won't stick with it. The other one, it's actually similar to this, but it's not the same. Is this? I'm like getting angry just thinking. is modifying the program.
Yeah.
And it infuriates me when I hear this. And I'll tell. I've said the story before, but I'll tell you. Like, do you remember Jim Wendler? He also is a big influence. Jim Wendler's 531.
Yeah.
So do you remember when that came out? You remember how huge that was?
Yeah.
That thing took the industry by storm, and it was really revolutionary in many ways. Not in that like it was a revolutionary design, but like it was revolutionary in its simplicity.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people thought it sort of like Dan John's Easy Strength. Like it was revolutionary in its simplicity, and like people really appreciated that and enjoyed that.
People still come in now and use the 531. I still hear people using it.
Yeah, it's so good because it's so simple and it's enjoyable. And he made different ones like the boring but big, and then like he just had different options for different people, and it was great. But I remember when it came out, and I remember when if you do 531 properly, you're going to get great results. There's no way around it. Like it is a very, very effective system. And I remember I had a bunch of people being like, "Hey, have you tried 531? I mean, like it didn't work for me. I thought it was a pretty bad program." And I was like, "What the fuck do you mean? Like it didn't work for you? Like unless you're an elite strongman powerlifting competitor who needs like something much more individualized, and maybe like you're so strong that like you can expect to gain 5 to 10 pounds on your total in a year, like it will 100% work for you if you did it." And they're like, "Well, no, I'll tell you, because like I got the program and I know he told me to make my training max 10% less than my real max, but I didn't do that. I actually made a little bit higher, and I added extra sets here, and I did this." And I was like, "Hold on. So what you're saying is you didn't fucking do 531, right? You literally did not follow instructions. You didn't use the right percentages. You added extra stuff." And the same things, like I hear all the time, whether it's gaining strength, losing fat. Yeah, like my calories, they said to put it here, but I decreased my calories by an extra 1,000 just to be safe. I'm like, well, no fucking wonder, because then you're binging on the weekends and you're like eating them all back or whatever it is. It's like people, aside from program hopping, they get a program, and then for whatever fucking reason, they change the program. Like, well, I also added an extra 12 hours of cardio this week. I'm like, oh, that's smart. That's like fucking delightful. Thank you. Like you didn't do what I told you to do. And so it's not only do people not follow a program consistently, but when they do get a program, then they don't actually do the program they're doing. And then they decide, well, this didn't work. This was stupid. It's like, no, stupid, do the program and it's going to work. And it's like, so I'm getting super angry just thinking about it. It's just frustrating because it's like you have the plan, follow the plan. It's so hard for people sometimes to just like, all right, I'm not going to change a thing on this. I'm going to do exactly what it says, and that's it. And like if people could do that, or if people did do that, they can do it. If people did do that, they would get way better results.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, sometimes I use the example of powerlifting, and you know, it's like, oh, my deadlift is paused, on my bench is paused, and it's like, okay, let's stick with it. Let's see how the program works. If it still pauses, let's look at a few tweaks in the program. It's not a case of, oh well, I'm just going to add in, you know, an extra 25 minutes of buys and tries at the end of the workout. Stick with the process, and you know, going to the, you know, the name of the podcast, you know, Strength Chat. Being patient with it, adding in the strength training, sticking with the process will help with it. I think sometimes people always look for the magic exercise or the magic formula, and you listed a couple of exercises that would be in the basis of the program, such as chin ups, you know, your big compound lifts. And yeah, I just think completely agree. If there's a program put out there, I've tried 531, and if you stick to it, you do get results.
And you know what else? It's you brought up the bench press, and I'm glad you did, because it's not only all of that stuff, it's also having completely and utterly unrealistic expectations for a decent rate of progress. Yeah. Like it's for example, and this is something that happens pretty consistently. Someone will be like, hey, my bench press is stalled out. Like, what exercises can I do, or what program can I do to fix it? And I'll be like, well, like I ask the questions in a certain order on purpose so that like I can really get the truth out of them. And because if like the main question I want to know is, how long has it been stalled? But I'll start off by saying like, okay, well, so how much are you benching? They're like, okay, well, I'm benching this amount. I'm like, okay, cool. So how long have you been stuck there? Or like, when was the last time you increased weight? And they'll be like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, that's not a fucking stall. Like, like that's not, and people, they are a little bit surprised when I say that. Like, what do you mean? I was like, do you expect to increase your weight every week or every 2 weeks or every month for the rest of your life? And they're like, no. I'm like, so why are you thinking this is a stall? Like, this is just part of the process. And I'll break it down by numbers for them. I'll be like, if you increase your bench press by 10 pounds a month every month for the next year, then you will increase your bench press by 120 pounds. You do that for the next 2 years, you increase it by 240 pounds. You increase for that next 3 years, it's 360 pounds. Like, most people don't do that for their entire life as a bench presser, never mind in 3 years. Like, and that doesn't even include how much weight you're lifting already right now. Like, assuming you're already, like, say conservatively 100 pounds. So you're going to be bench pressing 460 pounds in 3 years? Like, are you out of your mind? It's one of the things. It's like, people need to sort of have that reality check of like, listen, you literally might go 3 months and add 5 to 10 pounds to your bench after, like, once you become like a more intermediate lifter and start getting into that world of like intermediate, high intermediate, advanced lifter, you add 5 to 10 pounds in 3 to 4 months, like, celebrate. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I added a 2.5 kilos onto my deadlift, and I was ecstatic. I'd worked hard for that, but as a beginner, you always push to, let's try and add on, each workout or each week, try and nudge it up a little bit, and then you will see fast gains, fast increases in weight on the bar. But yeah, exactly how you said, managing their expectations so that they're not expecting that it's going to go, crazy increases all the time, and managing those expectations. So just on the topic of what's realistic in terms of, when people are looking to lose fat, build muscle, get stronger, what is realistic? What should people be expecting, whether you're a beginner or, like you mentioned, heading into intermediate?
For fat loss, you mean? For like strength gain, fat loss, like what specifically?
Yeah, so obviously when people are coming in and people are okay, so right, I wanna drop a little bit of fat, and I want to keep up with the strength training. What's realistic in terms of dropping down body fat? And if someone is looking to build muscle and increase their strength, what's realistic and what should they be expecting? Because sometimes people come in and, like you mentioned there about adding on 10 pounds every workout. In 3 years' time, that's not going to be a realistic expectation. That's not going to happen all the time. So what is realistic? What should people be expecting?
So from a fat loss perspective, it depends. Like the scale is not the end all be all, as we know. But I will say, generally speaking, an average weight loss of 0.5 pound to 1 pound a week is good, is really good progress. And the most important part of that sentence is the average part, because people will hear that and then they'll go a week where like nothing happens, or 2 weeks, and they'll be like, oh, it's not fucking working. I'm like, hold on. How many weeks have you been doing this? They'll be like, I started on like this date, and it'll be like a total of 8 weeks, and they'll have lost a total of 10 pounds. And I'll be like, hold on. So your average is more than 1 pound a week. Like, yeah, but I haven't lost anything in 2 weeks. I'm like, that's not what I fucking said. An average is over the last 8 weeks, you've lost 10 pounds. It's an average of more than 1 pound a week. That average is the most important part of it. And then in terms of like how to actually analyze your weight, a lot of people, they compare the number day to day. right? So they're like, well, yesterday I weighed this and then today I weighed this. And it's like, well, okay, like that doesn't mean anything because you're going to have fluctuations. So I always recommend checking your weight month to month. So June 1 to July 1, July 1 to August 1, August 1, September 1, June 2nd to July 2nd, July 2nd to August 2nd. Like any weights in between those dates mean nothing. You compare every like 4 weeks to each other because then you can start to see a real trend. So for the first month, you're just gathering preliminary data. It's not even like you can't get mad at the fluctuations. You can't get upset. It's like you just analyze the data month to month, and that's how you can really gauge progress.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say for fat loss. For muscle gain, I would say generally about like, depending on how much fat you're willing to gain, 2 to 4 pounds per month is a good range to shoot for. Keeping in mind, when you first start out, you might gain a little bit more just right off the bat. In the same way, like when you first start losing fat, sometimes like you'll have a very quick weight loss. Just like there's less stomach content, less glycogen, like whatever, like you'll end up losing maybe 2 to 3 pounds in that first week. Same thing often happens with muscle gain. You have more glycogen, more stomach content. So it's not necessarily fat, but after that first week or so, 2 to 4 pounds a month is plenty. And for strength, that is a very, I wish I had more like precise numbers to tell you can expect this percentage gain or this amount gain. But if you've been training for 6 months or less of like smart strength and conditioning, I don't mean, and I have nothing against Zumba or Pilates or yoga. I think they're fantastic and they all have a place. But if we're talking specifically about, well, how do I track my progress in my bench and my squat and my deadlift and my chin ups and all that stuff, like for those movements, if you've been training intelligently in those movements for 6 months or less, you can expect to increase the weight and your strength in those movements usually on like a week to week or like every 2 weeks. Like you can like 5 to 10 pounds or so. And the more you go, like after the first month will be the best. And then the second month you'll go down a little bit. And the third month you go down a bit. And then once you get to 6 months, it like start to see like strength improvements maybe every month. And then after the first year, maybe every like 3 months. And then it's like, so it progressively, my favorite saying for this is the stronger you get, the harder it gets. Like it does not get easier. It gets harder. The stronger you become, the more weight you're lifting, the harder it gets to get better and stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like going back to when I mentioned about the 2.5 kilo PB on the deadlift. You know, it's not a massive amount of weight, but I had to work really hard to get that. When you're chatting about, on average, it's based on that one person as well. Just because sometimes I think people fall into the trap of, that guy over there, he added, he put on a kilo of muscle. That woman over there, she ended up losing a little bit more fat. They're increasing a little bit more on their squat. I think sometimes people are too quick to compare themselves to others, rather than like what we've mentioned throughout this chat, being consistent and sticking to their program, sticking on and focusing on their progress. It's about that one individual, not about why is the other person gaining more muscle or losing more fat quicker than them.
That's a really, really good point. I'm super glad you brought that up, because it's so interesting to see how people can get demoralized at watching someone else's progress. It's like, well, they're doing this or they did that, or that's like, who fucking cares?
Yeah.
Like, it is completely and utterly unrelated to you as an individual and your progress. Like, that's great that they did that, like, but has nothing to do with you, and it doesn't take away from your own progress.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a competition. This isn't like to see who did more, who did the whatever. It's like, it's a competition against yourself. And the competition really boils down to how consistently can you stick to your plan, regardless of all the shit going around you, regardless of how good Karen is doing or how good Susan is doing or what the fuck like Derek is saying, like regardless of all that, how consistently can you keep doing what you need to do to see your own progress and see your own success? Because what everyone else is doing doesn't fucking matter. All that matters is what you're doing. And if you can win that competition, then you're going to be incredibly happy with your results.
Yeah. That's why I'm such a big advocate of people getting involved in strength training. Why I think that is the foundation for any goal that you're going to go forwards with. I think running the powerlifting club and the people that I coach, if they've gone from lifting 50 kilos to 55, and someone else has gone from lifting 100 to 105 kilos. Like the celebrations should still be the same. They're focusing on their own journey, on their own results. And if they are getting progress, then that's good. Just because it's not as heavy or has lost as much as the other person, it doesn't make as much difference. And I think focusing on that does help a lot more with mindset and making other things fall into place, so that if you're feeling a little bit stronger and progress is happening in the gym, then you'll focus a little bit more on your nutrition and be a little bit more consistent with that.
100%. Well said.
Thank you very much. So chatted a little bit about the building muscle and losing fat, and covered a few things where people go wrong and pointing them in the right direction. What are the other big fitness myths that sometimes you come across where people think that building muscle and losing fat, yes, long term that potentially can happen, but what are some of the biggest fitness myths that you've come across that sort of you mentioned there about modifying programs as a big that sort of gets you wound up? What other bigger fitness myths are people struggling with?
Oh man, I'd say starvation mode is one of the most obnoxious ones that it just consistently has perpetuated this idea that eating too few calories will cause your body to go into this quote unquote starvation mode so that your body will prevent it from losing fat. It's fucking outrageous. And it actually really harms people, because it convinces people who are not in a calorie deficit and are not losing fat to then eat more, and then it just perpetuates them not making progress. For me, the simplest way to sort of understand this is, and I've had some people get mad at me for using these examples, but like it's usually getting mad because it's proving them wrong. Yeah. They'll say, I'll use the example of, when have you ever seen a prisoner of war who got fat from not eating very much in prison? And they'll be like, well, that's different. Like, they're really stressed out. And I'll be like, number one, why does that matter? Number two is, didn't you just say that starvation mode is when you eat so few calories that your body gets overstressed and you have increased cortisol so that your body will then prevent you from losing fat? Like, yeah, but it's a different scenario when you're in a prisoner of war versus when you're just in regular life. I'm like, it is a different scenario, but why would that change how your physiological response to eating too few calories and being very stressed? And there's never a good answer for it. And the reality is, the people who think that they're in starvation mode they might be eating very few calories Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but by the end of the week, they're probably so deprived, and so they've been depriving themselves so much that they end up binging on the weekends, and they're eating way more than they think they are. And then that's preventing them from losing weight. Or maybe they're just not tracking at all, and they have no idea how much they're actually eating. And starvation mode is a myth that does not exist. There's nothing in the literature that supports it. There's literally nobody. Like, the only starvation diet that is documented in the literature, like, and before, like, they're like, wow, like, you probably shouldn't do this. This isn't really fair to people. Like, they lost obscene amounts of weight. And then what happened was, when they went off of the starvation diet, they ended up binging and gained a fuck ton of weight back because they were binging. It wasn't the lack of food that caused them to gain weight. The lack of food actually caused them to lose weight very, very quickly. Then the rebound effect, and then binging and nonstop eating, and like a lot of the psychological issues that then happen from starving yourself can be an issue. But it's not that eating too few calories will cause your body to fight against you and then you won't lose weight. Like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, yeah. I think when people go down those routes and don't necessarily know the full amount of information, it's dangerous. And when people sometimes come in and, okay, so what nutrition protocols have you used before? Oh, well, I used to use this, and I got into really good shape, but then I ended up putting all the weight back on. Okay, so well, maybe that technique didn't actually work as well as what you thought it was, because I know sometimes it does get mentioned quite a lot. Is just being sustainable. You've got to, nutrition is something that you're going to have use forever. So just using these sort of fad diets and things that are dangerous and aren't going to get you results.
100%, man.
Misleading people.
It's like a lot of it. It's like, that's what happens when people do a lot of these juice cleanses. They'll be like, yeah, like what works really well for me is these detox, this juice cleanse. I'm like, okay, interesting. Like, tell me why it works for you. Every time I do it, I lose like 20 pounds in a week. And then what happens? I gain it all back. All right, probably not your best bet. Like, let's try something else, because a week is not a good marker of progress. It's so interesting how that happens.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on, because mentioning about mainly on the topic of muscle building from the clients that I'll coach, what are your thoughts, or some of the biggest fitness myths when it comes to people using supplements to build muscle, and sort of the misled information that they have on that?
I would say like the biggest myth is that is that supplements are going to be like the missing link that you finally needed to really make extraordinary results. And one of my favorite sayings is like, supplements are supplemental. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're not consistently strength training 3 to 4 days a week for 3 years in a row, and if you're not consistently hitting your calories and have your diet in check for at least 3 years in a row, you have no business like investing lots of money in supplements. Like, it's a waste of time. Yeah. You can get the same exact results that you would have otherwise if you just stayed consistent. And I see a lot of people before they start a program, before they start getting their diet in check, before they're meal prepping or anything, like, what supplements do I need? I'm like, you need to supplement with a serious dose of patience and like a lot of fucking consistency before you decide to actually invest your money into creatine and into like whatever it is. Like, and creatine's great. There's a ton of research supporting it. I very much encourage people to use it, but taking creatine when you're only getting like 2 sessions in a week on average, and like you haven't really been strength training very long, is a way. I would rather someone strength train for 3 years, max out, like they're like really max that out, and then start using creatine before they like, you know what, like I just started training last Tuesday, so I'm going to buy like a ton of creatine monohydrate. I'm going to do a loading phase. I'm going to double the loading phase. And then I'm going to it's like, dude, just don't do that. Just fucking strength train consistently for like a year. You'll put on a ton of size and strength. And then if you want to use creatine, go for it. It's fantastic. But like, don't make step number 1 to do the thing that's going to like give you 0.00001 result. Yeah.
Maybe you might have just opened a gap in the supplement market there, using supplements of consistency and patience. I think.
I mean, the nootropics have been huge in the last few years, like the concentration ones. Like, maybe we could bottle up some consistency and sell it.
Yeah. It is. It's a really good point. I get it a lot with people saying, right, yeah, what supplements do I need? And it's like a lot of stuff. And an example is, I used to train a woman who basically she was really tired all the time, and she went to the doctors, and it turned out that she had a lack of iron. Now, I just looked at her nutrition, and she was saying, oh, well, I've got to take all of these supplements and I've got to do this. Okay, not related to muscle building. But I said, right, okay, let's try and look down the route of what can we improve from your diet to help when you go back to the doctors. And all she did was started adding a little bit of a little bit more red meat into her diet, and you know, she seemed to get a little bit better. I'm not saying that red meat was the be all and end all, but you know, a supplement is there to be a supplement of your diet. It doesn't replace the diet or the food that you eat.
100%. Absolutely 100%. Well said, dude. Dude, I love all the points you've been bringing up, man. Like, this has been a tremendous call. I'm really excited about this. I think there's going to be a lot of people who benefit from it.
Awesome. So we have covered a lot there. And the main thing is, you know, it is a common theme. People coming in, look, I want to build muscle, lose a little bit of fat, but sometimes they can be misled. So what would be your take home points for people listening, or your words of wisdom when people are looking to build muscle, lose fat, and point them in the right direction?
Say that one more time. You broke up. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. What would be your take-home points or words of wisdom for people who are looking to build muscle, lose fat, but are sometimes misled by information?
The biggest things are find something you love and you can do it consistently, and enjoy the process. I think that's probably the biggest part of it all. Is we're so often in a rush to get somewhere. We're in a rush to achieve our goals. Where like we feel like, oh my God, I got to do this so quickly. I want to lose fat so quickly. I want to get strong so quickly. It's like, for what? Like, for what? Like, why does it have to be so fast? And when you create this arbitrary deadline that it doesn't exist except for in your head, then you end up burning yourself out and not having fun in the process. And the thing that I really, anytime I'm nervous about doing something, or anytime I like start to like feel myself like getting annoyed about the process, or like wanting something to go faster, I always like try and consciously put myself in the position of myself as 90 years old, and thinking like, when I'm 90, am I going to look back at this and am I going to regret like how I'm handling it right now, or will I regret like being more patient and having fun with it? Will I regret not having a blast in this process? And that usually puts me in a good mindset, and to understand like, hey, like realistically, like what does this matter? Like what am I putting all of this stress on myself for? What am I trying to rush myself for? Relax, have fun, enjoy the process. Like, push yourself to get better, but don't allow pushing yourself to get better to take the fun out of the process and everything you're doing. Because if you're not having fun, and if you're not enjoying it, and it's not making you a happier person, what the fuck are you doing it for?
I think that was an absolutely awesome little quote there. I've never really thought about that. You know, you do say to people, enjoy it, but yeah, using that of when I'm 90 and sit back and think about it, I thought that was brilliant.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. This has been a really wonderful call, man. I'm so glad you reached out. I'm excited to share this. I think it's going to be really helpful for people, and I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It's from following you can see in the content that you put out there that you have fun in what you're doing. And you know, since starting this, the whole reason why I've continued doing this podcast is because it is fun. I do enjoy it. On a selfish note, I learn a lot as a coach myself, but I also have a lot of knowledge that I can pass on to my clients. And, you know, that's the whole topic of, you know, making sure that people are heading towards the right direction so that they can achieve their goals, is exactly why I wanted you on as a guest. So for people listening who maybe want to have a look at the content that you put out there, or have any questions, or want to get involved in some coaching with you, or ask any questions, where can people find you?
I would go to YouTube. I'm putting out content like every day. So that's just Jordan Syatt, Syatt, and then Instagram, Syatt Fitness, Syatt Fitness. And if you just Google Jordan Syatt, you're going to find a whole amalgamation of information. Anything you need, you can always reach out.
Awesome. For everyone listening, 100%, go look at the content that Jordan puts out there. It's fun, it's informative, and it'll point you in the right direction, rather than, you know, sometimes being misled by some things that are put out there. So I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. Thanks a lot, Jordan, for taking the time to chat with me, and I will see you all next week.